Alright you bastards, here is another build. This is a spear build, mostly you could call it Scion of Virtue build, and it's one of the most easy used builds that I've ever done, and it's extremely powerful, although not the most damaging one. It's so easy to use and it's so efficient on Way of the Wise you wouldn't believe. All of these footage that I've recorded is on Way of the Wise, and I'm having absolutely no trouble with these boss fights. I couldn't show you any tougher boss fights because I haven't got to that point, but as long as the build functions like this, you will have no issues whatsoever. This build focuses on a couple of new mechanics, which we will cover now. Let's go to the equipment section, and here I'll show you a couple of new things. We are going to use Scion of Virtue set because of the two bonuses that we get. One is thrust damage plus 18%, which we will use, and bonus attack from dash attack. That means while you're running you will do an attack, and when you hit an enemy with that dash attack, that's called a dash attack, when you're running and do an attack, then your next attack will do twice the normal damage. This is a very important thing which will make this build very easy to use. For the second weapon I went with Atagi Sadamune to get more killing strike damage, which works against humans very good. Now for the special effects on our spear I would suggest change to attack hard so that we get more ki. We're going to need that. Killing strike damage, attack from behind if you can get that, and also if you want you can add fire damage to the weapon. Also get hand cannon, that does increased fire damage as well, that will stack upon all the fire damage that you already have. And as the second ranged weapon get Ravenwing Rifle or Warrior of the West Bow to get more damage reduction from the set. From the other armor pieces I would suggest go for Kingo's armor one piece to get more killing strike damage. But you actually no, forget about that, don't go for Kingo's armor. You can go for that if you don't use Atagi Sadamune. You can go for Armor of the Exceptional to get more tornado damage, or Red Demon armor to get more spearfall damage. Or you can go for Master Swordsman piece where you will get a skill key reduction. That's also very useful for only wearing the one piece. My equipment looks like this: Carnage Talisman, Weakness Talisman, Hermit Talisman. These are the most important ones. The others are optional. Protection, Tiger Running, Steel Talisman, Quick Change Scroll. You can do those for, or you don't need to. The most important thing here is the new Hermit Talisman. It basically makes a stone effect where you can go forward without flinching when an enemy hits you, so you can constantly attack, but it lowers your defense greatly, which we will use with our Guardian Spirit, with the new Guardian Spirit, to great effect. It's called Enku, and it gives you nullified damage from dash attacks. That means when you do a running attack and when you hit an enemy, next couple of seconds you will be invulnerable. That's extremely powerful. Probably the most powerful special effect in the game so far. So that we will use that with the bonus from Scion of Virtue set, and also with Hermit Talisman, which I will explain in the fighting phase a bit further on. Thrust damage from this Guardian Spirit is also important, because we will use thrusting attacks to a great extent. For the second Guardian Spirit I always use Ayakomori to get more damage from behind, but you don't have to, you can go for more skill damage or whatever you want. As for the skills, always go for those passives that I always show you guys. I don't want to really repeat myself constantly, it's just going to take unnecessary time. I'm just going to cover spear section here so that you guys know what skills I'm using. The important skill here is Tornado, if you want. You can choose which skill you want to use. I like Tornado a lot. You can use Piercing Rain, that does a lot of stabbing, thrusting attacks. You can use Stability as your Mystic Art. This is Piercing Rain, very cool move. It's up to you what you want to put as a combo ender, what type of skill. Definitely get third rule of thrusting. As for the mid stance, we will only use high and mid stance. For high stance you can also choose Spearfall instead of Tornado, depending if you want to use a Red Demon armor piece or Armor of the Exceptional piece. Up to you. Or you can switch constantly if you want. For mid stance we will use a skill called Entangle that gets a human enemy on the floor and then you can use Killing Strike on them. Or you can use Twirl if you want. I really like this Entangle, it's much easier to use. Although they will block it most of the time, when it hits, then they're fucked because of all the Killing Strike damage that we have. From the Ninja and Omnio tree, you all already saw what I have. Carnage, Weakness, Hermit, Protection, Steel, Quick Change and Tiger Running. Get also the bonuses that increase your running and dash endurance. That means a lot because you will be constantly running at the enemy and you don't want to lose ki while you're running because you really want to use that skill in the end if you can. But there is also an alternative that I'm going to talk about when we get to the fighting phase. But use the typical things here, nothing really new. I will leave the list so you guys can see what from Ninja and Omnio I chose. As for the core stats, it looks like this for me. Go for body 99. You're going to need all the health you can get for Way of the Wise. I'm very underleveled for Way of the Wise, but it still works. That's how powerful this build is. I went with Heart 69, although I want to max it out at some point, and the rest is up to you. Go for more magic than dexterity and 33 spirit to use all the buffs from Enku. Let's start with Great and Demon Hunting. This is on Way of the Wise. Actually every fight is on Way of the Wise in this video. So what we're doing here is simple. We start the battle with Carnage and Hermit Talisman. You can also put Steel and Protection and Quick Change if you want, Tiger Running, whatever. Then we run in, and while we're running at the enemy we use any kind of an attack. We will not flinch because we have Hermit Talisman going on, so we will finish our attack. And then we will have a brief period of invulnerability. That means that we are going to be able to strike the enemy without being staggered and do whatever we want in the next couple of seconds while we are invulnerable. When that invulnerability wears off, you go out and then you go back in again with running and an attack while running. And just continue doing the same thing over and over again. That way you will keep your invulnerability from your Guardian Spirit, and also the second attack that you're going to use will always be twice the damage than normal. We will now see what's happening with that in this fight. Tachibana Muneshige is a guy that's really pain in the ass no matter how you fight him. And I've used a simple mechanic here. I've used all these buffs that I've told you in the previous fight. And now what I'm doing here, because on him the skills don't work, the Tornado, the Spearfall or Piercing Rain, they don't work particularly well on him. So what I'm doing here is simple. I rush in and I run at him, I use an attack, then I get damage times 2 buff for my next attack, and then I just use a poke with triangle button from mid stance. That's a thrusting attack and it's fast enough, and that will do per hit from 7 to 10k damage, depending on the buffs that you have, how strong they are, and depending on is weakness on your enemy or not. Oh yeah, you need to cast weakness on your enemy all the time. That goes without saying on these hard difficulties. And that's simple. You just run in, strike an enemy, get invulnerability, and then do whatever you want to them. This is Lin Naomasa. He is a pain in the ass in Way of the Wise because he's got some insane defense buff. You can see the low amount of damage that I'm doing to him. It's absolutely insane. It's not my equipment or anything else. Although I am underleveled for Way of the Wise. I'm only level 280 or something. And for him I've used a different type of tactic. Instead of thrusting attacks after a running attack, I went and used Entangle whenever I could. He blocked half of them, but half of them he did not block, which means he is down and I can use Killing Strike on him. That's extremely useful, especially against him, because normal attacks do so little damage that you need to do a high damaging attacks in order to finish the fight in a decent amount of time. So let's recap. You use Hermit Talisman, you use Carnage on yourself, you use Weakness on the enemy. Others are optional. Protection, Steel, Quick Change, Tiger. These are optional. You can choose whatever you want here. Then you run in, you strike an enemy while running. Then you get buff. Depending on the type of enemy you're fighting. If you're fighting a yokai boss, it's very good to end with skill like a Tornado or Spearfall or Piercing Rain. You can buff the damage from Tornado and Spearfall through Red Demon Armor Piece, only one, or Armor of the Exceptional. Choose your poison there. Or you can go for Master Swordsman Armor Piece that will reduce your key usage when you're doing skills. And that's it. You only adapt to the fight. If there is a yokai enemy, as I said, you do that. If there's an enemy, if there is a human enemy like Lin Naomasa or Tachibana, you use what works best against them. Versus Lin Naomasa, Killing Strike works best, so we want to get him on the floor, while versus Tachibana, the normal poking thrust attack works best because you can do from 7 to 10k damage from that simple one poke from triangle button from mid stance with spear. It's absolutely insane. And that would be it, lads. This is the build. I hope you enjoy it. I think you can get through Way of the Wise with this build without any issues whatsoever. I don't know what are the other buffs from bosses on different missions, but as I shown you here, you have tools to deal with anything. I hope you enjoyed the video. I will leave a couple of more fights after this one so you guys can see more how it's done. And that will be it. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to check my Twitter account. Here I do regular updates on what's happening and whatnot.